Welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's I, your reluctant gringo, back again with another video, and this is our Superman review. We just got home from the theater. We just saw Superman, and I'm here to give you a spoiler-free review. I don't want to spoil really anything for anybody who wants to see the movie. Now, we all know that I've been excited for this movie because I'm a huge DC fan and I'm a huge Superman fan. So I was really excited to see this movie. I like the movies James Gunn has done in the past, Guardians of the Galaxy, things like that. I like Peacemaker a lot. And there's a lot to kind of pull out of this movie. I'll tell you right off the bat that when the credits rolled and I stood up, I have to be honest, I really enjoyed this film. I really enjoyed the movie. But then I started to digest some of the things and listen to other opinions. And here's the thing about this film. This film is going to be incredibly divisive, and not divisive because there's no overt political message in it. There's no overt immigrant message to it other than Superman's an alien. And how dare he come down here and tell us what to do? It's just the same thing you've heard from Lex Luthor for decades. So even if you want to look for it and you may find like a sliver of it here or there, it's not really there. You're not really getting talked to. You're not really getting messaged. You're not really getting a lecture when you see this movie, as some people feared that you would. And I think that's a really good thing. I think that's great because Superman should be for everybody. A comic book movie starring Superman or Batman or Spider-Man or any of these major pop culture comic book figures should be something that's made for everyone to enjoy, not just a certain segment of the population. So I have to say, kudos to the studio, for DC Studios, for doing that. So let's get to the good, let's get to the bad, and let's get to the things I think that could have been done better or what flaws this film might exactly have. First off, this is a comic book movie. This is a comic book brought to life. This is an exact reply and rejection of what Man of Steel was, the Snyderverse, and how dark and gritty and how looking for a realistic tone out of a comic book movie, right? We already get a lot of that with Batman, and it works with Batman. But with Superman, he's not really a gritty character, right? He's Superman. And that's what you get in this film. You get a comic book Superman. You get comic book environment. You get comic book action. You get comic book dialogue. For comic book fans like myself, I couldn't be happier. For other people in the audience and other people that I talked to afterwards and other people that I saw the movie with, they'll tell you they didn't like it at all, or they felt kind of let down. And other people I talked to were like, this was awesome. This was a home run. James Gunn did it. He established the DC universe. He's got the foundation in place. And really, that is what you're going to see. This movie is going to have a million different opinions about it. But in the long run, it's going to have three camps. Absolutely loved it, absolutely hated it, or just don't know what to think about it, or just really have no feelings about it. And so with that, I'll tell you everything that I liked about it. First off, David Cornswet. I thought he did a great job as Superman. I thought he did a very good job as Clark Kent and a great job as Superman. I felt connected to the character. I felt like he could convey emotions. I felt he could convey the struggle of being Superman, yet trying to reconnect and connect to his humanity while also trying to preserve his heritage as a Kryptonian. Something that we see all the time in the comic books. We see all the time in the narratives. Rachel Brosnahan, great as Lois Lane, strong-willed, hard-headed, looking to do what she can do, totally devoted to getting the story and totally devoted to helping out Clark. But if I had to choose a favorite character before we get to the others, Krypto. I loved Krypto. They got Krypto absolutely right. And we covered Krypto's first appearance in Superboy from back in the 1950s on this channel a couple months back. And they got Krypto absolutely right. He's destructive, disruptive. He doesn't obey. He's a headache for Superboy, just like in this film. He is just like, he's loyal. He's there when you need him. He's faithful, but he's a little wild. And that is Krypto. That when you get introduced to Krypto in the comic books in the 1950s, and you read his first appearance, that is him. And he was great throughout. And it was fun. Every time he was on screen, he was fun. And I think Krypto's actually going to become a fan favorite when this movie is all said and done. And audiences have had a week or two to go and see it and digest it and come out with their own opinions. Mr. Terrific, awesome. Out of the three Justice Gang, as they call them, and if you know comic book history, you know the inside joke there with the word gang, right? Mr. Terrific was the best of the three. His character was perfectly acted. Great action scenes. He has a signature action scene in it that's sort of dedicated to just him. It was wild to watch, and it was great on the big screen, and it just kind of put a smile on my face because it was just so well choreographed and so well done. Guy Gardner, Nathan Fillion pulled off a great Guy Gardner. He had the attitude, he had the emotional intolerance. From 1 minute he looks like he's going to be your best friend, the next minute he looks like he just wants to give you the finger and punch you in the face. He has no fear. Of course, he's a Green Lantern. He's not supposed to have any fear. He doesn't give two craps about what you really think of him. He'll argue whatever he wants, and he wants to be the biggest voice in the room, and he acts that way. And it's great to see. It really was a great Guy Gardner. Now, as far as Hawkgirl goes, I kind of feel bad for Isabella Merced because I don't think she really got the screen time for her character to come across as anything but sort of like implanted there. You really don't know anything about her. Most comic book fans will know all of them, right? I think most people will be familiar with what a Green Lantern is, maybe not necessarily Guy Gardner. Most people don't know who Mr. Terrific is, but he's given a lot of time on screen to relate to the audience. Hawkgirl is not. She's got maybe 3 or 4 scenes. They gave her this weird hawk scream, which I know sometimes in the comic book she does, but it just didn't come off well. Not that she did horrible, but then the way she delivered her lines, which is probably the direction she was given, she didn't come off as like the most likable of the 3. And again, Hawkgirl as a character is sometimes not the most likable hero in the DC universe. So the way in which that character is introduced in this film I don't think really did many favors to that character in trying to relate to a general audience. Now, the film takes place 3 years after the world already knows about Superman, already knows about metahumans. They've known about metahumans for hundreds of years. And so you're dropped in the middle of a story. You're given some narration at the beginning, some reading to do at the beginning to kind of understand where this movie is what's the starting point of this film. So again, there's a lot you kind of have to just go with in the beginning. But if you're a comic book reader, you're cool. You're good. You know where you're at. You know where you're going. You know what's going to happen. You can kind of anticipate these things. If you're not a comic book reader, and this is where I think the people who didn't like the film had some issues, or they were just sort of dropped in the middle of something and they're like, what, who, where? And the high level of science fiction in it, and that's something we'll talk about a little bit later as a drawback, is something that a lot of general audiences aren't used to, right? Having a lot of science fiction thrown at them at once, especially when you're expecting a superhero film and you're expecting Superman beating up bad guys and flying around and all that. This movie speaks directly to comic book fans. This movie speaks directly to Superman fans. It speaks indirectly to the rest of the audience. And that's why you're going to get so many differing opinions walking out of this film. Now, I've seen other out-of-theater reactions that say, knock it out of the park, home run. For me, it's a home run. It's a knock it out of the park. I loved it. But again, like I said, I talked to the person sitting next to me, and they're like, this is the worst Superman film I've ever seen in my life. I said, okay, well, that's their opinion. And they had multiple criticisms, down from the costume. They didn't like the costume, down to the way in which Superman was portrayed. Again, Superman means something to different people everywhere. And a lot of people, the only Superman they know are the Superman they've seen in movies. So they're expecting the Henry Cavill or the Christopher Reeve, and they're expecting that Superman. If they're not familiar with the Superman of the comics, which can be a different Superman, they could be disappointed, and you could be too. So if you're expecting the indestructible, in no way vulnerable Superman, this is not going to be the movie for you. If you're okay with and you understand that Superman does have vulnerabilities, has been challenged before in the comics, has been in dire situations in the comics, has had to use his brain instead of his brawn to get out of situations, then yeah, you're going to appreciate this Superman movie. As far as CGI, graphics, things like that, I thought they were all wonderfully well done. I really had no problem with any of the CGI, any of the fight choreography, any of that, any of the different types of lenses that they use, whether it's the fisheye lens or anything like that. I thought it all worked very well. I thought it all worked very, very well and helped tell the story in a very good way. For people who don't like the movie, you are force-fed a lot. This movie does not stop. There's constantly something going on, being introduced, being force-fed. And I don't mean force-fed in a bad way. I just mean there seems to be so much going on, so many different little twist plot lines, so many characters introduced, right? You got Element Man or Rex Mason or Metamorpho or however you want to call him. You got him introduced. Lex Luthor, by the way, I forgot, how could I forget Lex Luthor? I thought Nicholas Hoult was an incredible Lex Luthor. I think he had a different take on Lex Luthor than we're ever going to see. I think it showcased his brain and how Lex Luthor can use his brain to fight Superman. And I think that is something that's going to be surprising to people who are used to the Gene Hackman Lex Luthor or Kevin Spacey Lex Luthor. This Lex Luthor takes it in a different direction with how he uses technology, how he uses the modern world to combat Superman. And yes, there is a scene with monkeys typing on social media. That is true. There was that rumor a couple months ago, and I said to you, I might be disappointed if I don't get to see a room full of monkeys typing on computers. I got it. It was for a few seconds. It lasts for a few seconds, like maybe 2 seconds, and that's it. But the movie tries to give so much, to set up so much, to create and world build so much that you can feel overwhelmed if you can't keep track of everything in your own head, or again, if you're not a comic book fan. So you get Superman introduced, then you get Krypto, then you get the Fortress of Solitude, you get the robot servants of Superman introduced, you get Lois Lane, you get Clark Kent, you get Lex Luthor, right? And this is all happening within the first 15 minutes. Then you get the Justice King. Oh, wait a minute, there's Guy Gardner, there's Hawkgirl, there's Mr. Terrific. All right, what else are we adding? You've got, and we all know the bad guy is Ultraman, but it's sort of like it's a conglomerate of Ultraman Bizarro. It's not the pure Ultraman as we know him from a different world, different dimension, different multiverse. He gets introduced. Then you get the Secretary of Defense, Rick Flag. He gets introduced. Then you get Jimmy Olsen. You get Cat Grant, Steve Lombard. You get all the reporters, Perry White, right? They don't have big roles there. There's their kind of filler background characters. You get Eve, the girlfriend of Lex Luthor. You get Ma and Pa Kent, who I liked. I thought they were more down to earth. A couple little things there I can understand where they treat them or have them act like the old foggy folks who don't know how to use technology. I get the old joke, and I can see why some people are thinking like, okay, that's overused, it's overdone. And we still got more characters to go. You've got political figures, you've got militaries being introduced, you got different countries introduced, you got an international conflict being introduced, then you got a kaiju being introduced, and then there's just other things just happening, other organizations. So there is, and this all within the first 45 minutes is just happening. It's sort of like drinking from a fire hose. Even when you're thirsty, it can be a lot to take in. And that's one of the things that when it comes to James Gunn, we kind of see in some of his movies where there's so much being introduced, so much going on, that something gets sacrificed, whether it's the details of one certain plot or the development of one certain character, i.e. in this movie, Hawkgirl. So even though I did love the movie, after a couple hours after seeing it, sort of having a moment to sort of not become prisoner of the moment, and say, okay, at the end of the credits, I loved it. Okay, let's back off. Let's be honest. Let's not just be a cheerleader for a movie that, yes, I did love, but let me be honest with you and say, okay, these are the things that could have been better, because this is a review, right? And I want to tell you, I don't want to tell you this is the perfect movie, because it's not a perfect movie. Very rarely is there ever such a thing as a perfect movie. The question was posed to be, what part of the movie would you change, alter, take out, or say needed to be rewritten? The scenes in which Superman is being held prisoner. And I'm not going to tell you how that happens. I'm not going to spoil that for you. But there's a lot of over-the-top sci-fi stuff. That's where you get the monkeys typing on the computers. But there's some other over-the-top sci-fi stuff, over-the-top astrophysics, over-the-top quantum mechanics. There's a lot of that. Again, just within that one little segment, there's so much density of information, so much density of trying to go, okay, I was in a regular world with superheroes. Now I'm in this world where there's so much science fiction going on. It almost overtakes, it almost derails the narrative a little bit in the moment. It's able to save itself. So if there's one moment, there's one section of the movie I'm saying, okay, that wasn't as well thought out. Maybe it looked good on paper, but the execution wasn't the greatest because of overload of information. There is the signature James Gunn humor. It's there. It's everywhere. Sometimes I think humor can be detrimental. You're in a very serious scene. You're in a very serious moment. There's somewhere you can go with that. Or sometimes you just need to slow down and let that moment be and let that moment happen. But sometimes it gets clipped with a joke. Sometimes it gets clipped by a funny observation. Sometimes it gets clipped by just a sort of a personal insult. And that can take you out of that very serious moment where you're feeling a very deep connection with the characters, such as there are a few scenes where Lois and Clark are speaking to each other and they're having a meaningful conversation. There's something going on there. Or there's two other characters that are having a conversation and it's a very deep conversation or meaningful one, or a conversation that has massive consequences depending on its outcome. And it's clipped with a joke. And I think James Gunn uses that humor as a way to sort of transition into the next scene. It's sort of his way of sort of getting the movie to move along. I can get that. I can understand that. It doesn't necessarily mean that it belongs there every time. But with this movie, you also feel sort of like you're running a little bit of a sprint and a marathon at the same time. It's a long movie, a lot going on, a lot of information, a lot of narrative, but yet the tone changes Again, you get those quips and those jokes sometimes. You get those serious moments. You get high levels of action, but there's never a catch your breath moment. And sometimes, it's like cooking. I guess movie making to me sometimes is like cooking. I love to cook. And sometimes you just need to let the pot simmer and walk away and let it be for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or a minute or whatever it might be, whatever the recipe may call for. There's never that simmer moment in this film. So you're constantly running and catching your breath as the movie goes on emotionally. But then again, if you read comic books, that's how a comic book is written. 23 pages, boom, 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 get to the end. But overall, like I said, the movie, I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with the characters. I had a lot of fun with the action scenes. I had a lot of fun with the dynamics between the characters, what there was allowed to be. I thought there is a foundation there for the DC universe to continue, as it will with Supergirl. For me, like I said, this movie was exactly what I was looking for. I was never the biggest Man of Steel fan. I was never the biggest. I liked Henry Cavill as an actor. I like him as Superman. I don't like how these Superman films were just so dark and gritty, because it's the one thing in DC that isn't dark and gritty. Superman is the one sort of beacon of light within that dark world. And that's why he's Superman. That's why he's the head of that table. So there's a reason why I really like this film and how it's set up sort of a comic book universe to be displayed on film going forward with such a rich tapestry of characters to draw from within the DC universe. But will this film break box office records? I don't know. The word of mouth is going to get around. I think people are going to be curious. People are going to see it. I think people are going to go this first weekend and watch it. I don't know if the film has legs, especially after the Fantastic Four comes out. Will this film become really a memory in the public mind? That's the big question. For me, it won't. But again, this film's legacy is going to be one of a divisive start with fans, with the DC universe. For comic book fans like me, it's a home run. Can't wait for the next one. For people sitting next to me or in front of me or behind me who had differing opinions, again, there were people who literally told me it's the worst Superman film I've ever seen. And then there were people that just not that excited about it afterwards. So that's going to be the hill to climb for this film and for DC Studios going forward. So with that, that is my review of Superman 2025. I hope you let me know what you think of the film once you see it. I hope you let me know if you agree with me, disagree with me. What do you think could have been different? What do you think was perfect about the film? And do you think DC Studios did the job it needed to do to continue with this new DC universe? All right, with that, I'm still your reluctant gringo, and from south of the border, I appreciate y'all watching. Salute and a huevo.